presentation that we had. So we kind of have our own, the only thing. It's the only thing here. And the only thing I had to really change was in this config.xml. I just set the starting web page to reveal that index.js instead of the hello world index.html.
Yeah, the website, you can open it and not, yeah.
This one here.
Exactly, so this would be the application, and if you swipe, I think you can actually do that with the mouse, you can see how the...
Oh, yeah, this is touch enabled. I can actually touch it.
Okay, so that is something people don't see, but if you use the mouse, you can just swipe. And the interesting thing is, once you move over to the native plugins, you can, we didn't really change the code. This is the same code running across all devices. We could very easily deploy this thing to a BlackBerry if it felt like it. You can go to the plugins and ask for the device information. It will give you the Lollipop phone, which is just the default name. And that, of course, works across all APIs. And do you want to show some of the more interesting examples?
Yeah, device information, you can't really, it's nothing really interesting, but you actually have native notifications as well. So this is kind of the native UI for Windows Store apps, which is, I'm just writing hello. If I do the same thing in Cordova or in Android, you get kind of that material design notification. And you kind of, yeah. Same thing with the camera. If I click here. Here's what I'm saying, you can get the animation, but if I went to the options, you can actually integrate it with the integrated camera of this laptop. So these are just 3 examples of native plugins, but there's a lot more. So there's like accelerometer data, there's location data, battery information if you need it, and there's like thousands of them out there.
There's virtually anything. The baseline is this works very simply, right? You just write a JS API. Many people have done this before, and maybe you want to open up some source code while I explain this. You basically just write a JavaScript API, and then you write some backend code which handles that JavaScript API. So if you have your own native thing, and that native thing might be open up, I don't know, a 3D cube written in C++, you just write your native function for that, and then describe a JavaScript API that calls that native function. And of course, because Cordova has been around for a while now, and companies like BBC have used it, and those companies are also smart enough to open source their stuff, we have like a whole bunch of components that are out there right now. So if you compare it with the React.js, React.js really goes ahead and transpiles your code live, and basically at build time takes your transpiled code and turns it into a native component, whereas Cordova goes ahead and at runtime, it runs your code and executes something native. So it's really build time versus runtime. And how native you want to go kind of depends on whatever you want to do.
So this is kind of what the code looks like for the camera part of it. So what we kind of did is just navigating.camera like that picture, which is the plugin, that common JavaScript layer that the plugin enables. And then it's very simple. Like on success, we do a callback, which is where I'm just setting the picture that we take to the box that you saw in the presentation. Same thing with on fail. So it's super simple, just kind of one line. I can also show sorry, wrong file. What it looks like for the other plugins that we kind of saw today. So for example, the device properties, it already introduced this namespace called device, so we can actually just call it device.model and all the different properties within that class. And yeah, we can kind of party from there. Same thing with navigator. Just one method call, and we had that native navigator notification experience. So the plugin code is actually, how it actually works is that, although it exposes this common JavaScript layer, all these platforms actually implement the behavior natively. So there's actually internally, if you're writing the iOS code, it's actually internally calling Swift code or Objective-C code. Same thing with Java code. So how you kind of install these plugins is through this config XML. This Visual Studio kind of abstracts all this away and has this nice UI about it. So plugins, we have a kind of a list of plugins out there right now. These are just the core ones, but you can install more from kind of there's a giant repository that's available on PhoneGap and Cordova of other plugins that are implemented, and you can just pull it from here. But the core ones are kind of the most frequently used.
Do you maybe want to show some of that source code?
Yes. Plugins, camera's probably the most interesting one. Source. So
I
the camera, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is what it looks like. So each of these folders just defines the native code. So if you open up the Android one, I think that's pretty interesting just to see that. And you go with, I don't know, camera launcher.java. There you go. It's just default Android code. And as soon as you run the JavaScript API, that is the code that's being executed. I think it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think we kind of made the point.
Yeah. So then how you kind of pull down this code is you just, through this UI, you cannot expand this. But you kind of click the plugin that you want and just click add, and it'll pull down all that native code into your project.